doesn't progress because of the new discoveries and inventions, but the mutation of the paradigm happens through revolution. Like the social ones, the scientific revolutions are announced by the increasing intolerance in the existing order. In this particular case, scientists feel that the old paradigm has stopped working but can't easily let go of it and rather obstruct research. Scientists from both sides will exhibit accusations of heresy, today called conspiracy, or orthodoxy, negating. Every scientific revolution is not just incompatible, but often unmeasurable with what preceded it. And it's the unmeasurableness that explains why passing from a paradigm to another can't happen gradually, nor can it come from logic or from a neutral experience. It has to happen all at once, in a revolution. What we see, sure enough, depends both on what we look at and what the previous visual concept experience taught us to see. Our generations for centuries have the omnipresent spinning ball concept impressed as the only possibility for us to exist. Anything that is not included in this paradigm is out of any chance, out of society, of logic, of the world. Yet, the globalist elite is pleased to reveal the flat earth model. Freemasons have an obligation to truth that they adhere throughout symbols and messages disseminated everywhere. In movies, in cartoons, on the web, on the Illuminati card, Underground Zero, and in the United Nations logo. And if they don't know what the shape of Earth is, who does? Today, the current model that sees the terrestrial sphere rotating around the Sun, 1,000,000 times larger in a galaxy of millions of stars, in a universe of millions of galaxies, is rapidly entering a crisis. We can't yet know if this crisis will turn into a scientific revolution that will subvert the model, but the breaking points of the system seem to be unequivocally emerging. Before exposing them, a prefix. All the information in the astronomical field come exclusively from the deceptions of the space agency monopoly. These, careful not to contradict each other, have a common dominator, as common is the vector in all their logos. Every image, testimony, experiment, information, exploration and scientific hypothesis about Earth and what surrounds it is born or created here under the vector's protection at the expense of the worldwide contributor. We will complete this prefix with the explanation of Robert Simon, the NASA employee that created the last blue marble model we have available.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green. There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit. It is photoshopped. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
There was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere. It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water. Just what I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space, but I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it has to be. It is photoshopped, but it has to be. It is photoshopped, but it has to be.
So the image of Earth, that we have available is reconstructed, altered, composited. In a precise word, fake. What does it take to create fake digitals when you have the best technology on hands? All it takes is a blue screen or a zero-gravity plane, and you're on. Here's what they purposely show you from the camera that is filming ex-President Bush's visit at NASA. A freshly modified image and a chromatic screen. The chromatic screen is an instrument used to substitute the color of the background with any scenarios. In CGI, computer-generated image, you can access the the ISS that isn't there. The trick consists of letting air bubbles float. Here is the game, and here's the trick. They show it to us themselves. Or we can take a walk on space. Let's take the Chinese, and we have bubbles here too, traveling undisturbed. Could they be in an exercise swimming pool? You can create a puppet out of nowhere when the insolence has no limit, or show the hidden side of the moon when the bad taste is without shame. All rigorously modified, digitalized, fake. Why not show authentic pictures? Probably because they don't exist. Till this day, it is not possible to have an authentic picture of Earth. We can just see the comparison of the sizes they show us to understand they don't even have the same reference. Supposedly, a scientist took this picture in space, but all you have to do is raise a little the luminosity and we find out the trick. A rectangular cut, this image has been added. Whichever interpretation you want to give to the vector that comes in the space agency logos, scientists that operate there act confirmed to each other, like scoundrels of a grotesque Masonic farce, each one with a role. Cristoforetti, between a shampoo and an ablution, shows herself with a chemtrails normalizing number. Adam Stelzner plays the role of the leader on Mars Attack, where we seem to find a little of all. Bones, Grandma's ladle, rats, unless that they are not, like very likely, images tinted red, photoshopped, fake. Surely not published by mistake, but voluntarily used as a stress test for our minds that in front of such an obvious fake, perpetrated from our authorities, we will be increasingly ready to accept it. Cognitive dissonance. And Obama, who wants to achieve technologies to overpass the radioactive Van Allen belt and send man for the first time past the lower orbit. But wait, didn't the United States already done this mission 50 years ago? Landing on the moon with a lamp cam and foil, kept all together by tape?
When, much to my surprise, a pair of bunny eyes.
This material is so insolently fake that either they are crazy creating this staged reality, or we are dumb believing it. Both. The information monopoly is well coordinated with a world of school, science, politics, and is miraculously able to insinuate contradictions so big in the perception of reality that almost no one dares to look at them. Eric Kobler says, the human being is an information system with the consequence that it can be healed through information. This is what we are trying to do now, talking about the shape of Earth. Here's everything that doesn't add up in the current spherical model. Let's try to explain it to a child that asks, why don't the people in the South Pole fall off? Because gravity keeps them to the ground, answers the school teacher. And from that day the child will want nothing more to know of this ancient intuition, original, sacred doubt. If he tried in adult age, he would be invaded with such a quantity of formulas and mathematical equations to get struck forever. The force of gravity is a theory, not reality. What passes for law of gravity can be explained with the concepts of density and buoyancy. An object denser than air will fall towards the floor. One less dense will tend to float. Let's hear what Einstein says about Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest and noble geniuses of all times.
How does it feel to be the smartest person on Earth? Well, you should ask Nikola Tesla about that.
Now let's hear what Tesla says about gravity.
The theory of relativity wraps all these errors and fallacies and clothes them in magnificent mathematical garb, which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple, whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are very brilliant men rather than scientists, but they are metaphysicists.
Researcher Anthony Pash wrote, "What has errantly labeled as gravity are actually magnetic force lines. And in fact, the electromagnetic universe as described by Tesla and occulted by the theory of gravity is what they're actually working on at CERN." But what they tell us is that the force of attraction should push us towards the nucleus of Earth. But who's ever seen this nucleus? When the maximum perforation depth achieved by man is barely almost 8 miles, just the depth of Earth crust. So what are they talking about? The nucleus, for what they can show us, doesn't exist. Surely, in a subverted paradigm when the law of gravity will have to disappear, scientists will adapt to other laws, maybe to the density ones, or the electromagnetic ones, and the kids will be able to finally see the upside-down man fall off. Because the law of gravity is just the theoretic instrument to justify the impossible roundness of the terrestrial surface and hide the true physiognomy of the universe. Dear child, they told you that the Earth is spherical. Okay, but can you see it? Who knows? Surely not looking at the horizon. Nor from the window of a plane. Or from an amateur high-altitude balloon. As you can see, in all these cases, Earth is evidently flat. Yeah, sure. You might see it in an altered images from NASA, but we analyze this in the prefix. They are artifact, CGI, or filmed with a deforming fish island. Here's NASA's globe rotating with motionless clouds. This is the time-lapse of the terrestrial lights with a lot of special effects on lights. Storms, aurora borealis, ridiculous. And here's an example of a fish-eye Earth. So, it's all artifact. So, where can we see the curvature? Not from the ISS shuttle. That doesn't exist. We already acknowledged. It's a movie set. We can observe a plane flying. It could be a drone. It's a trick.
All of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
We would be willing to believe it, only if during a live feed, an astronaut decided to show us what is visible from the porthole of the shuttle. I repeat, in live feed. Surely not in the scenes treated in post-production. Otherwise, we stay in the computer graphic field. Should we see the sphere from satellites? What satellites? The ones described from the pen of the science fiction author Arthur Clarke that invented them in 1945. Yes, because satellites are an editorial product and were realized only 20 years later by NASA. But till this day, we don't have credible images of the construction of a single satellite or of the ISS. Hands-on data. Today we should have in orbit about 20,000 satellites, but no one has ever ascertained their presence, verified a possible collision or fall, the blacklit passage observing the moon. never seen. Neither from Earth nor from space, excluding the images elaborated with computer graphics. Good morning. This is the last picture from our so-called satellite on Italy. And yet, we should believe that similar objects can resist at the temperatures of the thermosphere and exosphere till over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. But doesn't aluminium melt at 1,220 degrees Fahrenheit? Unacceptable. It's more likely that satellites have stayed the outcome of a riotous fantasy and the lie of an unscrupulous power that has been dealing illusions for decades, making madness out of public money. In a subverted paradigm model, maybe we'd see these invisible hordes of satellites fall off too. Also because today, all telecommunications are realized by 1 million of miles of optical fiber cables, and radio bridges are present everywhere in our territory. After all, it should be easy to verify the existence of satellites. All they would need to do is turn Hubble around, for example, make it face Earth, and show us the center of an American city on live feed. They never do it. They can't. They would first have to take it up in orbit. But first, there would have to exist an orbit around a spherical Earth, which is in fact put up for discussion in the flat Earth model. Here, our Earth is not the board they told us. So let's see what it is. Well, what it could be, since we are talking about models. Sure enough, we do not want to abandon the terrestrial sphere to embrace the soothsayer crystal ball, but we are obligated to flank to the prudence of details, the courage of vision. Also because if the idea of the globe falls, Freemason Newton's gravity falls too, like Freemason Darwin's evolution, that makes a man and nothing at the drop keel of infinite space. Exactly Darwin indicated in the Protocols of the Wise from Zion as one of the skeleton keys to weaken the non-Jews, proclaiming their brains to the fakery that it's all a coincidence and that we are grains of dust with no importance. Let's get back to our Earth. Every object that disappears at the horizon ends up beneath Earth's curvature. This is what conventional science says by daddy's mouth to the child that faces the sea for the first time. But it's not true. With an optical zoom, the figure that had disappeared on the horizon gets right back on sight. This is simply because the disappearance is not due to the curvature, but because our sight is limited by the point of dispersion of perspective, over which an object gets progressively erased by our optical horizon. If the curvature of Earth was, as they tell us, 8 inches per mile square the distance, we could calculate with this graph the length of the curvature at any given distance. For example, a distance of 118 miles should give a curvature of 1.74 miles, but if this was so, how can we see from Ventimiglia Mount Cinto in Corsica, tall 1.71 miles? The point of observation is at sea level, and the distance between this plaza in Ventimiglia and the tip on Mount Cinto is exactly 118 miles. If Earth was curved, we could only be able to see land taller than 1.74 miles. But we are able to see the entire Corsica's outline, from tip to coast, unexplainable on the spherical model. The web is full of experiments like this. How is this site possible? Before accusing researchers of doing mass destruction, we gotta fix this problem. For the laws of perspective, the horizontal lines intersect at the vanishing point, forming a triangle that comprehends all of our possible line in sight. We don't see like this, but like this. Over our visual horizon, everything disappears, just like the sun, like these buildings that will look as smaller and collapsed as they get over our prospective horizon. Obviously not because Earth is a sphere, If the collapsing of the buildings was due to Earth's curvature, we couldn't see them straight, but with an inclination. But it isn't so. The curvature is not there, in fact, it's not observable, it's not contemplated in the real world, and constructions engineers know that very well, since they never mention it in any calculation making big constructions. A geometer and engineer with 30 years of experience published on the Birmingham Weekly, "All our locomotives are designed to run on what may be regarded as true levels or flats. Anything approaching to 8 inches in the mile, increasing as the square of the distance, could not be worked by any engine that was ever yet constructed." And again, Engineer Winkler was cited by Earth Review magazine about Earth's curvature, where it stated, "As an engineer of many years standing, I saw that this absurd allowance is only permitted in school books. No engineer would dream of allowing anything of the kind. I have projected many miles of railways and many more of canals, and the allowance has not ever been thought of, much less allowed for. A small navigable canal for boats, say 30 miles long, will have by the above rule an allowance for curvature of 600 feet. Think of that, and then please credit engineers as not being quite such fools. Nothing of the sort is allowed. We no more think of allowing 600 feet for a line of 30 miles of railway or canal than of wasting our time trying to square the circle." So, do we want to force engineers to be curving canals? How could they? Can you imagine any basin of water curved? "Water doesn't curve," yells the boy with no more patience. "It doesn't act like that, but like this." So, at the least, in correspondence of oceans should exist huge sweeps of water on the same level. At least there, the Earth should be flat, but they keep promoting the opposite model, a curving ocean. Simply unlikely. The natural physics of water is to maintain its level. Water is even used to make a bubble, which is for leveling constructions. This, because of water, on the contrary of science, can't lie. They tell us that its curvature is due to gravity, and all this gravity that can keep the stormy ocean squished can't keep a butterfly down from its light flight? Pure mystification. Plane flights tell us even more. Let's check it out. At rigor of logic, a plane flying at an altitude even to the Earth's surface would have to keep pointing its nose down. This doesn't happen during flights. Why? Asks the famous boy that has by now got some courage. Because gravity, always her, keeps the plane on the level curve, parallel to the ground, as if the plane was a sphere tied to the ground with a string, answers orthodox science. So to indulge the curvature below, there is no compensation necessary. To not indulge any curvature and proceed linearly, the pilot would have to fix the path of the plane upwards. It might be scientific for science, but it's illogic. And if a linear flight was all you needed to get lost in space, what do we need missiles for? Science and technology are so incongruent. No, it's not like this. As this persistent chemtrail along various miles shows, airplanes fly linearly and without the danger of slipping away in the universe. Let's take the flight routes. In a particular case in 2015, a flight from Bali to Los Angeles had to make an emergency landing in Alaska. But in which model would it be considered an emergency trajectory compared to this one, and the spherical one, in which the two distances seem to be very much equal? Rather here, in the flat Earth model. It's on this surface that planes fly. This is the only way we can understand the reason for their path. This is actually this. This is this, and this again is this. And all of this simply for the economy principle. There is no airline company that wouldn't prefer the shortest and the most economic route. This silliness exists only in a virtual model, on the hands-out that they serve you on the planes while you eat your peanuts. All flight paths are calculated on a similar map because they are realized on a flat Earth, so true that no flight has ever circumnavigated Earth, north to south, the only impossible route on such an Earth that isn't a ball. An elegant way to explain Earth's curvature is given to us by Eratosthenes from Cyrene, mathematician and philosopher that lived in the 3rd century BC. Well, our boy is now a young man. He's insolent, and he takes count on that without too much reverence. How is this possible? He asks. That till this day we have to exhume Eratosthenes to prove a fact as huge as the shape of our world. Simple, because these exhumers only have an handful of dust on their hands. Eratosthenes' experiment consists on measuring a spherical Earth radius. His results was only 5% off from what is now taken for valid. He simply observed the difference of the shadows projected by the sun at noon of summer solstice in two towns, Siene and Alexandria of Egypt, that have a distance of 5 million stadiums between them, and thought to be on the same meridian. When at Siena the sun doesn't project any shadow at noon, at Alexandria the shadow of the gnomon makes 7.2 degree angle compared to the vertical, which is a 50th of a round angle. Here comes the deduction. The circumference of Earth must be 50 times the distance between the two cities, which is 25,000 stadium, 24,200 miles, almost as much as the 24,900 miles of terrestrial circumference accepted today. In the moon landing movie, the shadows of the bodies projected from the sun on the lunar surface look divergent to each other, reported to a distance of a few meters on a plane surface. There is no need to presume any significant curvature, but if the sun was distant 150 millions of kilometers from the moon, the shadows of the objects this close should be parallel. We can only justify this with a close source of artificial light. We know that NASA built the moon landing at home, but what can we still observe is how on a level surface the inclination of shadows can vary with the closeness to the light source. What Eratosthenes solved, presuming Earth's curvature, needs to be done by calculating a much minor distance to the Sun. The flat Earth model, in fact, describes the Sun close to Earth, just like the vision of the rays suggest. And if this is fakery, as some might define it, from the atmospheric refraction, it means that Eratosthenes too made these calculations induced in error from refraction. But it is not so. Wikipedia then states about apparent diversion of crepuscular rays, invoking the effect of perspective that concentrates all of the lines at the point of optical horizon disappearance. But this shouldn't influence our perception of seeing them vertically. Perception doesn't work like this. But we see the sun rays this way, and this means that their divergence is due to the nature of a multidirectional light that comes from a much smaller and closer sun than what they've told us. Structured like this, the sun creates divergent shadows like the ones measured by Eratosthenes in 5,000 stadiums of space, but on a flat Earth.
Okay guys, just a quick explanation here. The three suns effect in Antarctica, just as the experiment here shows, when the light is really close to the edge, you see the reflex on the right and on the left. Just as it happens in Antarctica, when the sun is circulating over Antarctica and it's really close to the dawn, which covers our Earth, that's when you see the three suns effect.
Три солнышка.
NASA claims that we successfully landed man on the moon 6 times between 1969 and 1972. Here we are in 2016, and NASA constantly tells us that we can't go beyond low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is between 99 miles and 1,200 miles away. The moon is claimed to be 238,000 miles away. That's a big difference.
NASA's next spacecraft, already being built and tested across America, will do those things and more.
This is the spacecraft that's going to take humans to explore the solar system. It's the next big step for NASA in exploration.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit. 2.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
3.
Plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
4.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
5.
And unlike the previous program, we are setting a course with specific and achievable milestones. Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
I've been making my horizons broader, going on this adventure, searching for the reasons why. All I see is this
is the Royal Academy of Science. We don't need to prove anything.
My question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction?
They're both the same.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
A lie is a lie, and it don't matter how many dumb sheeple believe it. And the truth is the truth, hiding right out in plain sight, and still people don't see it. Man, this shit got me heated, and I won't stop till the elite are being defeated. They keep us deceived about everything that we think, and they keep it a secret. What we're taught is not conducive with reality. Big bang, evolution, and there's gravity. I tell the truth, and then these motherfuckers laugh at me, telling me the earth is Photoshop because it has to be. Most people accept the deception happily, but what they're doing to us all is a tragedy. God created the heavens and the earth in a verse, but we're living in a Freemasonic galaxy. They say we're monkeys on a ball flying through outer space, but there's no proof, it seems to have vanished without a trace. NASA and other agencies falling down from grace. You can take that bullshit pseudoscience and get out my face. I'm the antisocial type, you're a government prototype. That's why you make it a point to tell me that I'm crazy every time you're angry, cause you know I'm right. I'm standing outside the house of cards about to watch it fall. No more living on a cartoon ball. Horizon means horizontal, indoctrination is awful because you're taught the globe model. Ever since y'all could crawl, we follow rapists and murderers, liars, thieves, and sun worshippers, saying we can't see curvature cause we're all too small. And though it's never been proven, they say we're ripping and shooting, the earth is spinning and moving. Oh no, no, not at all. It's a criminal enterprise where deception intensifies. Assholes got us all living life on a cartoon ball.
It is Photoshop, but it has to be. What you're seeing here is a mirage.
They say that we went to the moon 6 times, but pure BS is the way that smelled. Now they're telling us that we can't even leave the planet because of the Van Allen radiation belt. Yeah, okay, sure. NASA, what you lying for? You lying now, you lied before. I can't take this anymore. The only thing they took to space was your imagination. Fake aliens are coming, now they have you waiting. We need to do something about it, no procrastination. Trying to cause the masses to awaken, that's the path I've taken. But you can see if you check all the percentages, so many people having cognitive dissonance. But that's what happens at the loss of your innocence. Then you get involved with all of this wickedness. They try to do all the humans this way. So are they just idiots? Who is to say? Conditioned by the television, it makes your decisions, opinions, and you just obey. Stuck in the material domain of Satan, where everything in each and every day is pagan. Mandela effect, cause the game is changing. People waking up and now the cage is shaking. The earth is flat, and that is a universal fact. If it isn't that, then tell me where the fuck the curve is at. They tell us that we can't see it because we're all too small, and now we're spinning on a cartoon ball. Horizon means horizontal, indoctrination is awful because you're taught the globe model. Ever since y'all could crawl, we follow rapists and murderers, liars, thieves, and sun worshippers, saying we can't see curvature cause we're all too small. And though it's never been proven, they say we're ripping and shooting, the earth is spinning and moving. Oh no, no, not at all. It's a criminal enterprise where deception intensifies. Assholes got us all living life on a cartoon ball.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison for your mind.
It is Photoshop, a mirage.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
My voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children. Victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world. A decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Here's our flat Earth with our magnetic center. This is the shoreline that we call Antarctica that surrounds our world. And here's my boat. I put my boat down and immediately the compass points north. If I want to circumnavigate, I want to head west or east, but we're going to go west right now. So I'm heading west, and as you see, west keeps turning. So I have to keep going, and this is how, when you go west, you end up going all the way back to where you started from. Same thing for east. I go east, I keep having to turn because my compass keeps making me turn to go east. If I want to go dead reckon west, so this would be dead reckoning west. If you watch the compass, I'm no longer going west, I'm going south. Any straight line on the flat Earth will eventually become south. And that is how you circumnavigate on the flat Earth. Nobody can circumnavigate south, because when you go south, you keep on going. North, and as I pass North Pole, I'm now going south, even though I'm going in the same straight line.
Hey everybody, this is a video about the sunbeams or the sun rays that come through the clouds called crepuscular rays. And what I'm going to do here is prove in this video with a series of proofs beyond a shadow of a doubt that the sun is close and the sun is small. First, I'm going to show you an experiment I did with the sun rays. That's very solid proof that the sun is in fact close and not very big. And then I'm going to refute Wikipedia's account of these crepuscular rays. They say that these rays are due to perspective, and that in fact they are, for all intents and purposes, parallel lines from a sun that's almost 1 million miles in diameter. But the fact that we see them splaying out, they say that that's due to perspective. I'm going to show that that's impossible. And then number 3, I'm going to show that it's actually, when you take a look at this picture of the crepuscular rays, that actually perspective is missing from this photo, if in fact the sun were 1 million miles in diameter and 93 million miles away. The heliocentric model is in trouble. So let's get to my experiment. I watched a video from my perspective. His video is called Flat Earth Sunbeams, Part 1. I was outside and I go, man, let me try that. And I just kind of ran in, I grabbed some cardboard, I cut some holes in it, and I wanted to see how the sun reacts coming through. So here I am, raising it high over my head. So I'm about 8 feet away from this, and the light doesn't diverge or spread out. You know, it doesn't splay out like we see the crepuscular rays. And this sun's far away. Just like in the heliocentric model, the sun is far away, right? 93 million miles away from our clouds. But we see the sun rays splaying out from the clouds as though it were a close sun and not a faraway sun. Well, you can see when it is far away, the light beams are parallel and they don't splay out or diverge from the clouds. So then I got a little bit more sophisticated. I went inside and I cut some nicer holes in another cardboard. You know, my budget went up. And here they are, and I put some CGI here. I put some beams in there, and you can see they are dead straight. No splaying out. And then you can also, there's a part here where I have it up overhead, and I had the same results. No splaying out. So this is the example of the faraway sun, that the rays, this is what we should experience coming through the clouds. The rays from a sun that's almost 1 million miles in diameter and 93 million miles away, when those rays get here, they should be parallel and dead straight. But we don't see them as dead straight. We see them splaying out or diverging from the clouds. Something's not right here. Okay, here I am inside. Notice I got my light close. Look at already, you can see the light splaying out. You see that? I drew you can see the circles on the floor and on my piece of cardboard actually. Those are the original size of the holes that when I was outside, they lined up perfectly. Here, you can see them completely splaying out. And if I put the rays on it like this, the sun rays, and that's not